Welcome. Welcome, everyone. As we say in the ancient language of Kemet, Hotep, Ankh Uja Seneb. Greetings, life, prosperity, and health to you. Welcome to this Introduction to MEDU NETER course. This video is intended to give an overview of the MEDU NETER language. Anuk Sabat Rkhty Amen. That means I am the instructor. My name is Rkhty Amen. Welcome into the temple as we explore MEDU NETER, the language and the writing. MEDU NETER language. The language of inquiry for this video introduction is called MEDU NETER or MEDU NETER. It is commonly known today as Ancient Egyptian. The ancient people of the Rkhty Amen, that is the Nile Valley civilization, which is located in Northeast Africa, called their language MEDU NETER. NETER, also pronounced Necher, means all existence or nature. So great was their appreciation of their language that they named their language the words of nature or the words of existence, sometimes called divine words. MEDU NETER was spoken and written by African people more than 10,000 years ago. It can be said to be the oldest attested language that has a large body of written literature. The carvings and paintings on the walls of temples and tombs reveal their attempt to explain the sciences of nature and man. Also, there will find man's oldest written spiritual teachings, history of Kemet written by Kemetic people, accounting, record keeping. Also on papyrus are found the world's first treatises on mathematics and medicine, medical procedures, herbs, astronomy, biographies, epic tales, poetry, and so much more. In fact, they wrote about everything that people write about today. The writings on papyrus was the world's first paper used for everyday correspondence. The people of Kemet invented a highly developed writing system along with paper, ink, and pen with which to write. Writing was and is one of the most important contributions that African people gave to the world. This introduction is part of a much longer course in the MEDU NETER language, and the textbooks for this course, which normally runs about 3 months. Here are the textbooks. The Writing System of MEDU NETER by myself, Rkhty Amen. The next book is Mwt Wr.t Conversation Book by myself as well. These are the 2 mandatory texts for the class. Other recommended books are A Beginner's Introduction to MEDU NETER by Mwt Wr.t. Another book is A Concise Dictionary of Middle Egyptian by Raymond O. Faulkner. And the websites are meduneter.com, that is my website, and also http://medu-neter.com. This is the website of Mwt Wr.t. One other website which is very useful and the students will use a lot in this course is hieroglyphics.net. This is an online dictionary. And of course, the students will need index cards and a notebook just for class. Let us begin this introduction. Let us begin with an opening ritual. We begin every class in this course with the opening ritual. It is a ritual that is said or offered to the ancestors and to nature. It is a libation and offering ritual. It was one of the most sacred rituals in MEDU. This ritual is inscribed upon monuments of all kinds and was recited daily in the temples and in people's homes. It is an offering of all good things that are evoked for the NETER or for the ancestors. And as the African tradition goes, always evoke the ancestors for their blessings on whatever we are doing in life. Here it is written in MEDU. I am going to read it in the ancient language, and then we will talk about what it means. Hotepti nasut usir inpu, di sinu peret cheru ta hinquet, ka tau ka hinquetu, ka kau ka apadu, ka shesu ka minketu, chet nebet neferet wabet, onket nechurim, inka ini makiu duau naturu, duau naturu, duau naturu. And it means, I give an offering to Asar and Inpu, that they may give a voice offering of bread and beer, 1,000 loaves of bread, 1,000 jugs of beer, 1,000 cows, 1,000 birds, 1,000 pieces of alabaster and linen cloth, and things all good and pure on which nature lives. To the Ka of the revered ancestors, true of voice, Dua Neturu, thanks to nature. Here we have the Hotepti Nasut ritual offering in pronunciation. All students are required, or shall I say, it is a goal of all students who take the course to memorize the Hotepti Nasut ritual, as well as learning to read it in the ancient language. Using indigenous names. It was at the first International Conference on Africa in Berlin in 1885 that the continent of Africa was divided among the European powers. The names given at that time are still used today. However, they are not the original names, nor are they the original divisions of the African people or their nations. Once we know African languages, we can then begin to use indigenous names. And it is important to use the original names because names identify culture and who the people truly are. So let us begin by looking at the most important name as we study the language MEDU. More than 10,000 years ago, what is today called Egypt was called by a different name by its original inhabitants. The people called their country Kemet. The people of Kemet probably never heard the name Egypt ever used. that name was not used until the very end of the historical period. They called their country Kemet. To write the name or the word Kemet, they used a picture of a burning charcoal. The name Egypt derives from the Greek language and the Greek word or Greek pronunciation Aegyptios, which did derive from a Kemetic name, Het Ka Ptah, which meant the house of the spirit of Ptah. Kemet. The word Kem is written with this picture of charcoal, and it is the word in the ancient language for the color black. Thus, Kemet literally means the black land, more in reference to the people and the color of the people rather than to the dirt. An African scholar named Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop wrote an essay on this word, discussing whether the name refers to the people or the color of the land. He put forth a very passionate and strong argument that Kemet refers to the people as being the black people. Here we have the word Kemet written in the ancient language MEDU NETER. I encourage all students or anyone looking at this video to jot down on your paper the pictures anytime you see them throughout this presentation. So first we have the charcoal, followed by an owl, a bird, followed by a loaf of bread, and then followed by a circle with cross sticks to represent a place. This is the full spelling of the word Kemet. And charcoal, as you know, is very black and very hot and burns in fire. There were two other names for Kemet. One was Ta Mary. Ta Mary is a term of endearment meaning beloved land. And there was another term or word used for the country. It was Tawi. Tawi is a political name meaning the two lands or the united two lands. So what looks like a long oval with 3 dots underneath is the writing of the word for land. And next to that, we have a farmer's hoe and 2 reed leaves. That is the spelling of Mary, which means beloved. Ta Mary, beloved land. For Tawi, the two lands, we have 2 land signs, one on top of the other. This represents the unity or the unified two lands, the political name for the country. So we have Kemet, Ta Mary, and Tawi. The name of the people of Kemet was Kemetiu, and here we have it written in the ancient language, and it means black people. So you can see the first part of the spelling of Kemet, the charcoal, the owl, and the loaf of bread, followed by a seated man and a seated woman. The seated man and the seated woman represents people. And so Kemetiu means black people. Notice the people at the end of the word, showing you pictorially that this word refers to people, the Kemetiu. Another name of the people was Remech. Remech, or Remo. Remech means people. And once again, you could see at the end of the word a seated man and a seated woman. This word may be the word that refers to all people as in humanity. Rimich. The name of their language. The name of their language was MEDU NETER or MEDU NETER. Today, people often call the language Egyptian hieroglyphs. But if you can remember where the word Egypt comes from, coming from the Greek language through Aegyptios, not a name that was ever used by the people themselves, it is not the name of the language. The name of the language, or the original indigenous name that the people called their language, was MEDU NETER or MEDU NETER. It can be pronounced either way. And here is a picture of two men writing on a wall in MEDU NETER. And what you can see here is it looks as though they're drawing pictures. You can perhaps recognize some things on the wall. Words of nature, MEDU NETER. What a special and wonderful name for a language. Nature on the left-hand side is written by using a picture of a pole with a white banner on top as in the modern world, it looks very similar to a flag. It is the writing for the word neter, neter. Neter means everything that exists. All of existence is one according to the Kemetic worldview. And neter refers to the oneness of all existence. It is very similar into meaning as the word nature, because when we think of nature, we think of existence, all life. And the word nature most likely derived etymologically from the MEDU NETER word, necher or neter. On the right-hand side, we have the word MEDU. MEDU is probably a picture of a walking stick with a round bottom to be walked or carried throughout the dirt in the sand. MEDU is the writing for words or language. So when we put them together, MEDU NETER means words of existence, words of nature. Here we have it written in the plural, 3 flagpoles together. This is pronounced neteru or necheru. The U on the end represents plurality. The U sound is represented by things in threes or more. Neteru means all of the infinite forms of existence. And every form of existence, everything is nature. Everything is nature. And there are infinite forms of existence. Nature is all existence. Neter is all of existence. Nature or nature was honored and revered by the Kemites, the Kemetiu. It was not worshipped in the sense of Western practice of worshiping, but it was respected and acknowledged as the source from where we all come and from whence we all will return. As you've already guessed, MEDU NETER is written with pictures. The pictures in the writing are of objects like plants, animals, and people in various activities. Pictures of nature and all objects in their immediate environment. There are many thousands of pictures that make up the writing system of the language. At the moment, nobody really knows how many pictures there are in the writing system. However, I will say that absolutely everything that they ever saw in their environment became a picture in their writing. Pictures offer many visual clues to help one understand what is written. Reading the pictures requires the use of parts of our brain that are never used in reading alphabetically written languages. Thus, the reader has an opportunity or uses an expanded part of their brain power or expands their brain power and goes deeper into their consciousness in order to be able to read this language. It's very much unlike alphabetically written languages like we have with English and its related languages. Hearing with the eyes and seeing with the ears. Here is an example of MEDU nature writing. The writing consists of everything in nature. And so I'd ask you to look at this carving on stone, on a piece of stone slab, and see if you recognize any of the objects here. Very clearly, you see two different kinds of birds, and perhaps you recognize the water and the NETER signs and others. Carving in relief. MEDU nature was carved on stone. And today, if one were to take a trip to modern-day Egypt, which was ancient Kemet, you will see writing on stone walls everywhere. This carving is in relief, which means that the carving was done so that the stone was carved back so that the pictures would stand out from the stone in relief. Once again, you see objects in the environment in nature. This form of carving existed in the very earliest period of Kemetic writing, over 10,000 years ago. Another type of carving is carving into the stone, as opposed to relief. And this carving is contemporary with the relief carving. Very, very beautiful objects of various, pictures of various objects in nature and people doing various things as well. This is an example of writing on papyrus. Papyrus is the paper that was used by the MEDU. It was made from the papyrus plant. It is the world's oldest or earliest known type of paper. This looks more like a type of printing or cursive writing on paper, and this writing was done with a brush. So the end of the pen was originally like a brush. Like another culture that uses a similar writing practice is Chinese, for an example, which is written on rice paper with a brush and ink. You may not be able to recognize objects, but once again, these are objects of everything in nature and life. You can see birds, beetles, rabbits, faces, mouths, many different things. I won't go through all of it, but I'm sure if you look hard enough, you will be able to recognize many things, even though this is more like printing than beautiful drawn pictures. Hieratic and Demotic, terms given by modern-day Egyptologists to talk about the various forms of writing. So the top row and the bottom row say exactly the same thing, only one is more cursive and the bottom row is more of a printed form. Now, in MEDU NETER class, the students learn to write as it is on the bottom row, the very printed form. This is the type of handwriting that students learn to use in MEDU NETER class. MEDU NETER was written with the Greek alphabet during the time of the Greek invasion of Kemet in 323 BC and continued to be used by the Coptic Christians. So Coptic writing is basically MEDU NETER written using the using the Greek alphabet with the addition of 7 extra letters or pictures to represent sounds that they did not have in Greek. But it is MEDU NETER written using the Greek alphabet. And lastly, for the age of technology that we live in now, there was a need to have a way of writing MEDU NETER on a keyboard. The computer, the iPhones, the tablets, the pads, anything that uses a keyboard, we can write MEDU NETER on a keyboard. Just like everything in the modern age, this was something that people really spend some time to make possible. So what it is, we call it transliteration. It is the name of the system we use to spell out the sounds of MEDU NETER in Roman letters. It is a written aid to pronunciation as well. Today in the technological millennia, there is also a need to communicate using the keyboard. However, we don't actually have a MEDU NETER keyboard with thousands of pictures. So this is a good way of representing the sounds of the language to be used on the keyboard. For example, the line on the very bottom is actually MEDU NETER. I'm actually going to read it in MEDU NETER so that you can see that this is MEDU NETER, and anyone who knows the language will be able to read this line very easily. It says, Inejarak neteru, imiuhat imwesket maati, Rkhty rin chenu, Rkhty rin neteru imiuhat nacher ea. Greetings, Neteru, who are in the hall of Maati. I know your name. I know the name of the Neteru who are in the hall of the great Neter. That's what it says. And this can easily be typed on a keyboard. Anyway, let us move on. I encourage students to put this off until the end of the first semester of the study of the language, because in the first semester, what students will mainly focus on are the pictures. Spoken dialects. There are many spoken dialects of MEDU NETER. There were many dialects of MEDU NETER spoken in ancient times, from the very beginning of its historical period. From one end of the river to the next end of the river, and by the river I mean the Rkhty Amen, which is today called the Nile River. Anyway, some of the dialects most noted are Coptic, spoken in West Africa and Senegal. Coptic spoken in modern-day Ethiopia and and Egypt, which was ancient Kemet, Wolof, spoken in Senegal, West Africa, and then many Bantu, as some people say, languages are dialects of MEDU, and then the languages which neighbor uh, Kemet in the Sahara, spoken in the Saharan languages, in the neighboring groups of people have dialects of MEDU. Speakers of different dialects could often read the same script, that is, the pictures. One of the reasons that they could read the same script is because the vowels were not written. And we talk about the absence of vowels in MEDU in our course. If anyone wants to study or hear more about dialects, I recommend reading The Unity of African Languages by myself and some of the works of Cheikh Anta Diop, such as Parenté Génétique, the genetic relationship between Egyptian and Pharaonic languages and the Negro African languages, which is in French, but much of Diop's work is translated into English if you look for it. Another person who has some comparative work in English is Diop's student, Theolope Obenga. You would look him up as well. But just to reiterate, even in ancient times, there were many dialects of MEDU. Language dialects is the nature of language. The nature of language itself is that there will always be dialects of every language, of any language at any given time. What did they write about? Wow. They wrote about everything we write about today. They wrote a history of Kemet in their own words. They wrote their history. They wrote spiritual writings, rituals, all kinds of rituals. They wrote books, literally books about astronomy. They named all the stars in the sky and the planets in the galaxy, and they wrote them down. They wrote calendars. They had calendars that they used. They wrote books about medicine, surgical practices, herbs and herbology. They wrote books about the natural sciences. They wrote treatises on mathematics. After all, these people were the builders of the pyramids and the ones who carved temples out of mountains. And they were magnificent, great mathematicians, and they wrote down their knowledge of mathematics. They wrote lots of stories and epic tales, poetry. They loved writing biographies and autobiographies. They were genealogists. They loved family histories. And on the walls of their tombs, they would often write their family genealogy going back many generations. They wrote lots of letters back and forth to each other. Just the general population wrote letters. And they had a postal system, and the mail was carried on boats on the Rkhty Amen up and down the river. They kept accountings of farm accounts, city accounts, all kinds of accountings. And everything we write about today, they wrote about. And these books, which would have been probably in the form, if they were written on papyrus, they would have been written in long scrolls that were rolled up and tied and put in libraries. There were libraries all over Kemet, world famous libraries that people from other ancient cultures came to Kemet to study in their universities and read in their libraries. Many of these writings exist today for us to read and learn from. So that was an overview of the language and the people, and a little bit about what you will discover when you begin to study MEDU NETER. And in our class, we begin from there. But right now, let's just switch gears for a moment and look at some greetings in MEDU NETER. One of the things that is very important today for many people is to begin speaking MEDU NETER. Bring it back to life. It is no longer really spoken by a population of people because it's a very ancient language, which the spoken language died out somewhere in the 17th century, other than the living dialects of the language. And so today we try to revive the spoken language. And also it is necessary for students to be able to read out loud in class. When they have a text or a book or a papyrus, we need to be able to read it out loud. And so we are trying to revive the spoken language to a certain extent. So here are some greetings that the students use in class and the greetings that we can use among each other in everyday life. The first one is Hotep, which is a basic word for greetings. It literally means offering. And so the idea or the feeling of this greeting is presenting an offering or offering peace and satisfaction to whomever you are speaking. The next greeting is Ankh Uja Sineb, which means life, prosperity, and health. What a wonderful way to greet people by saying Ankh Uja Sineb. May you have life, prosperity, and health. This type of three-word greeting is very common throughout the continent of Africa, even though it would be said in differing African languages. But in Kemet, it was Ankuja Seneb. The next one is Senebti, which means be well, be healthy. Senebti. Senebti. Then we have Shem Im Hotep. Shem Im Hotep means go in peace, or go with an offering, or go satisfied. Hotep is often translated in modern times as a word meaning peace. Our next offering is Ii Im Hotep. Ii Im Hotep, which means come in peace. So if someone comes to your home and you open the door, you can say Ii Im Hotep, come in peace. The next word is Tiu. Tiu. Tiu means yes. Nin means no. Nin means no. Tiu, nin. Oftentimes the students will ask me to wehem. Repeat that. Wehem. The word sabat is the word for teacher, or that's the feminine word for teacher, ending with the sound T. A male teacher would be sabah. The female teacher is Sabat. In MEDU NETER, feminine words all end in T, and masculine words do not. So Sabah, Sabat. And the word for student is Sabati, Sabati. So you can notice here that the word for student and the word for teacher are the same word. And that is really important because we are all teachers and we are all students. And the teacher learns from the student and the student learns from the teacher. And teaching and studying are lifelong endeavors. And no one can ever profess to know everything. And we can learn from everyone. So the whole idea that they are the same gives you a clue as to Kemetic worldview and their way of conceptualizing, which is one of the things that we will all learn from studying MEDU NETER and learn in this course. Their worldview, how they saw the world, how they lived their lives, their culture, their cultural concepts, and their way of conceptualizing. And all of this we learn through the language. Language is the embodiment of a culture, and that is why it's important to study MEDU NETER, to learn the culture of the people, as well as all the wisdom that they left in their writings. New words from today's lesson. Do you remember the meaning of these words? Take a look and see if you remember the meaning of the words. I hope that everyone who listened to this introduction will join us in our semester MEDU NETER course. I'm going to end the class by saying Shem Imhotep. Go in peace.